聞こえますか？大丈夫そうですね。はい。マスクなし大丈夫ですか？はい。じゃあちょっとマスク取らさせていただきます。改めましてこんばんは。日欧シンポジウム日本ヨーロッパの巡礼道から見る精神性と再生にご参加いただきありがとうございます。今夜2日目は、さまざまな領域から実践者の方々にご登壇いただきながら、多角的な側面から巡礼道の果たす役割の可能性について考えていきたいと思っております。それでは改めまして、今夜司会進行を務めさせていただきます菊池宏子と申します。よろしくお願いいたします。ありがとう。嬉しいですね。なんか久々にこれだけの会場の中でお話をするので、私も若干緊張気味ではありますが、淡々と時間内に終えるように進めていきたいと思っております。で、私は、アーティストという立場から国内外でアートを触媒にしながら地域コミュニティの活性化や学校づくりやまちづくりなどを行っております。2011年東日本大震災福島第一原発の事故を機に20数年住んでいましたアメリカを離れて、現在は東京と福島県富岡町の拠点に活動をしております。では早速ですが、自己紹介もまれて私のプレゼンの方に進めさせていただきたいと思います。まずは映像の方からご覧ください。こちらは、2020年コロナ禍がきっかけとなり、奈良県主催の年に1回南東部エリア、これ総称奥大和というんですけれども、そこで開催しているマインドトレイル奥大和心の中の美術館、通称歩く芸術祭、今回は2021年の活動をまとめた記録映像をちょっとご紹介させていただきます。こちらまだワークインプログレスということで最終版ではないので、その辺ご了承ください。もう一つ、こちらの方の文字は出てきますが、翻訳は必要ございません。で、せっかくですので、映像の中から皆さんの中で想像力を生かしていただきながら、芸術祭の様子を感じていただきたいと思います。では早速いきます。少し早送りをしての4分程度の映像です。 はい、ありがとうございます。こちらの方です。プレゼンの方に進めさせていただきますが。ごめんなさい。よいしょ。どっか行っちゃいましたね。よいしょ。はい、失礼いたしました。よいしょ。いけたかな。じゃあ画面の方。はい、ありがとうございます。まずはご清聴ありがとうございます。いかがでしたでしょうか。この歩く芸術祭、まずは自らの足で歩くこと、人間によって作られる作品が周りの環境を捉えるレンズでもあり、自らの内面を映し出す鏡のような存在でもあり、それによって生命の尊さ、そしてさまざまな感情と向き合うこと、さらには芸術祭として地元の方々と交流を経て関係人口を増やすことや、新たにこの地域の活性観光につながることを目指した活動です。今日はマインドトレイルについて詳しく話す時間がないので割愛させていただきますが、企画の中で私が作った作品1000本のひげ根が今回のキーワードでもある人間の精神性、再生と密接につながっていること、そしてこの歩く芸術祭にとって新たな伝統となる象徴的な作品に成長していること、ある意味ニューリチュアル、日本語にしますと新たな儀式、儀礼、慣習として毎年行われていることなどから、巡礼として私自身とても、少し遠い存在ではあるのですが、巡礼と何が根本的なつながりがあると思い、ここに絞って簡単にお話しさせていただきます。1000本のひげ根は、参加型の作品です。マインドトレイルを通じて奥山本に訪れた参加者がそれぞれに合った杖を選び、道中の伴侶としてマインドトレイルをし、最後はその杖を元に戻し、ある意味非常にシンプルな作品となっております。で、杖は地元の山々から切り出したヒノキの生の木を使って1000本の杖を造作します。毎年多くの方々の協力で作品が仕上がります。この杖が人間の肉体の延長にある触覚、ハブティックスのような役割でもあり、杖から伝わる大地の姿を体感してもらい、参加者の触れた杖に宿る人々のぬくもりや体験、それぞれのつながりを感じてもらいたい。そんな願いを込めて一本一本造作しています。また、1300年もの歴史があり、山岳信仰と仏教が混じり合った日本独特の宗教である主権道、地元の地域の日常生活に非常に密接な関係があり、ある意味一つの文化となっていることなどから、ひらめき、インスピレーションを受けた作品ということもあって、芸術祭最終日には杖をすべて回収し、会場の一つである天川村にある大峰山龍泉寺にてごまを焚いていただきます。1000本に込められた人々の記憶魂が宿る杖を、そして自然からの恩恵への感謝の意を込めて神聖な炎によって焚き上げることで、この作品、そして芸術祭が終わります。巡礼という言葉は人類の歴史を持っています。そのため定義するのは非常に難しいかもしれません。私も含め、すべての人は母から生まれ、へそを持ち、そして歩き始めます。そのことを今一度捉え直したときに、これから先どのように歩けばよいのか、例えばどのような観光の在り方、地域の作り方、関係の作り方があるのか、そして各々が求める癒しが歩きを通じていることとは何か、歩きの中で祈りを入れることで、平穏、安堵、さらには家族の幸せ、世界平和などを確保する機会になり得るのでしょうか。本シンポジウムの巡礼道から見る精神性と再生にもあるように、この場合、自らなしで芸術を介して開くことができる精神性、精神的な姿を取り戻すということは、私も今回いろいろとこんなことを考えながら今日の日を迎えさせていただいております。短い紹介ではありますが、午後の後半のディスカッションに向けて、より広い幅の、広い起点でシンポジウム2日目のテーマを考えていけたらと思っておりますので、よろしくお願いいたします。これからですね、登壇者の方に早速バトンタッチさせていただきたいと思います。 それぞれの持ち時間10分、15分と大変短くではありますけれども、後半のパネルディスカッションで皆さんと実践者としての議論が深めていけたらと思っております。で、パネルに入る前にちょっと少し休憩を入れさせていただきますが、私の方で今後は進行を務めさせていただき、ライブリーな議論へとつながることを望んでおります。それでは、1人目のゲストの方に移らさせていただきたいと思います。これ切ればいいのかな？ここからすみません、ここからちょっとテクニカルなところですね。はい。これを外せばいいのかな？大丈夫です。こっち大丈夫ですか？あっちで制御してるので。じゃあこれ私パソコンもらいます。はい。
La siguiente ponente es la señora Inés Queiroz, directora para Japón y Corea del Sur de Turismo de Portugal.
Konbanwa. Hajimemashite. Portugal政府観光局長の Inés Queiroz です。From here, I will speak in English. I would like to begin my presentation by thanking to all who organized and made this event possible. In a time of war, examples like this, where we discuss and debate ways of promoting and bringing together different cultures, are very important. It is truly an honor to be here and to share and learn from others' experience. Today, my presentation will be focused in three aspects. Why Fatima as a religious or a tourism route, the 4 dimensions of action that we took place in our strategy in Portugal, and a small video about the religious traditions in Portugal. Portugal has been positioning itself internationally as a destination for spiritual fruition. We are the country in Europe with the stable borders for 900 years, so it makes us a very old country with the same configuration, and we have traces of many religions and cults. From Jewish heritage to Islamic legacy, from Marian altars to the ways of St. James, and most important, because it's more related with our culture, the ways of Fatima. Tourism is a source for good. According to the World Tourism Organization, religious tourism is one of the driving forces to bring people from different backgrounds together under a common cause, the admiration and protection of heritage of tangible and intangible nature. It also has an important role in the economic prosperity of cities and villages, and therefore it is crucial to build strategies to develop these places as authentic travel destinations. This is the work that we in Portugal have been developing for the past years, creating a network between private and public to guarantee the best experience possible to all, visitors and residents. In the specific case of Portugal, Fatima is the most important religious pilgrimage route, or shall I say routes. The pilgrimage to Fatima goes back to 1970, right after the apparitions of Fatima. But the routes as we know them now were developed many years after. These routes, as I believe you have the chance to learn yesterday, were mapped and developed by Centro Nacional de Cultura, a cultural association whose main objectives are the promotion, preservation, and dissemination of Portugal's cultural heritage. Fatima, the site of the apparition of Our Lady Virgin Mary to 3 little shepherds, is today one of the most important places of Catholic worship in the world, attracting millions of visitors from all over the world. In 2019, the shrine received 6.3 million visitors and more than 126,000 visitors in organized groups. The largest celebrations take place on May the 13th and October the 13th, celebrating the apparitions. This year, last Friday, was the 3rd of May, and it was the first time after 2 years that the celebrations took place in a normal environment. It was very beautiful to see, and it was a very important moment in Portugal. Aware of all the potential of these routes, Turismo de Portugal and Centro Nacional de Cultura celebrated a protocol to promote and unify the mapping of the ways, marking them in a way of a true spirituality, connecting visitors with nature and local residents, religions, and cultural experiences. We have been working in close collaboration with municipalities, associations, the church, the Ministry of Culture, the regional tourism authorities, and other stakeholders. The work has been divided into 4 stages, and we have reached the end of the 4. Territory, product, promotion, and sale. The territory is what we have naturally: 4 ways, 670 kilometers of routes, monuments, nature, involving 36 municipalities and 4 regional tourism authorities. The pilgrimage to Fatima began right after the apparitions, but it became very popular in the 60s and the 70s of the last century, when Portugal was at war with its African colonies. Mothers used to promise to go to Fatima by foot if their sons came to home safe from war. For decades, the traditional pilgrim was the promise payer, wanted to arrive as fast as possible. This made the pilgrimage very dangerous and was one of the reasons why these routes were created. Pilgrims would go through highways, through roads, and even now, in the present time, for some people that go the fastest way, it is very dangerous. There are always some accidents, and that's why we wanted to make the journey more pleasant, but also more safe. For decades, these routes were marked by volunteers, but as the number of pilgrims increased, it became clear that we need a more systemic and combined work with different stakeholders. So we made a diagnosis of the ways. We defined a sign manual and a brand management. You can see it here. The tree where the lady appeared. And we began the work of signposting, cleaning, and safety. This is a continuous work, as we may imagine, because signs get lost, people sometimes damage some signs, they fall because of weather conditions. So this is a continuous work that must involve all agents that have responsibilities over the territory, and requires a straight cooperation between everyone. Sorry. So by now we have 4 paths completely configured: the North Way between Valença in the north of Portugal and Fatima, 350 kilometers covered in 13 journeys. This way, if you turn it in the reverse from south to north, not from Fatima, but from a near town, Tomar, is actually the Portuguese central way to St. James. So many pilgrims do it in the reverse way to go to Santiago. We have the Nazaré way between Nazaré and Fatima, 52 kilometers covered in 2 journeys. Nazaré is a fisherman's village with a great tradition of devotion to Virgin Mary, because the sea is quite revolved, and many fishermen used to die They have even a sanctuary also to Virgin Mary. We have the Carmelita route or Carmelita way that is between Coimbra and Fatima. This was the last way to be developed, and it goes from Coimbra exactly because it was the place where Lucia, the last survivor of the three shepherds of the apparitions, lived. She was a nun, and she died at the age of 97 in 2005 in Coimbra. And last, we have the first way to be developed, the Tagus Way, that goes between Lisbon and Fatima, 130 kilometers, covered in 5 journeys, 20 kilometers to 25 each day. So after the work with the territory, we began the work, the product. And this means that we had to create contents, information, something like a framework of hostels who could provide accommodation, establishing company service requirements, creating programs, training companies, training tourist guides, technicians, and tourist offices in a very demanding work that was only possible with the collaboration of all parts, public, private, associations, and residents. With this phase completed, but requiring, as I said before, a constant and never-ending work of maintenance, we started to work in the promotion. For that, Turismo de Portugal created a platform called Paths of Faith, where one can find all the pilgrimage experience, not only Fatima, but we are here to talk about Fatima, so I will focus on that. So all routes, stages, patrimony, difficulties, sites of interest, experiences, even KML files to display geographic way on mobile, accommodation, everything is at a single place. Because different visitors have different purposes and different needs. So if you want to find an hostel, you can find it here. If you want to know a little bit more about a church, you also can find it here. But if you need a company to carry your backpack, you can also find it here. Or if you want to do part of the way with a guide, you have all kind of information and services united here. And to finish our work of promotion, we also published with Centro Nacional de Cultura 4 guides with the 4 ways that are in English, Spanish, and Portuguese. The existence of these religious roots, the experience that one of us can have while making one of them, no matter the purpose, if you are a religious, if you feel yourself like a pilgrim, if you just want to find yourself, if you want to find your place in the world, if you just want to see the way or the nature, this is very important, I would say fundamental, for the development of a better world. Tourism, I believe, could be the responsible for a better and more concerned way of living. People who travel, people who go abroad, are people that are more open to difference, to religions, to cultures. For a better world, we should have a better tourism. I will now leave you with a very small video about religious traditions in Portugal. And I think I didn't exceed my time. We have no sound, but it's just the music. Oh, but it's not.
Sí, pero espérate que tengo que cambiar allí. ¿Le das a la play, vale?
So next speaker will be Matsushita Kiyohiro-san. Thank you. Voy a cambiar, ¿no?
始まる前に、今回は、四国遍路について、発表の機会をいただきまして、本当にありがとうございます。貴重な時間でございます。十分説明できるかどうか分かりませんが、よろしくお願いいたします。それでは、ただいまご紹介いただきました、四国の NPO 法人遍路とおもてなしネットワークの理事長をしております松田でございます。本日はこの理事長の立場がメインで話を進めてまいりたいと思いますが、観光の視点では実は四国ツーリズム創造機構という組織がございまして、その現在の前の理事長をしております。またここはスペインの領事でございますので、カミノ・デ・サンチアゴとの関係で言えば、実は私は在高松スペイン国名誉領事という役職もしておりまして、こういう3つの視点を織り交ぜながらプレゼンテーションを進めたいと思います。それで、今日のお話の概要でございますが、四国遍路文化の大きな特徴でありますおもてなしの心について、そして当 NPO の活動の紹介、さらにはツーリズムとしての四国遍路を歴史、文化、現代を行き来しながら紹介をしたいなと思っております。世界中の巡礼路の保護活動等の参考にしていただければ幸いですし、現在の我々の大きな目標について 最後にまとめてお話をしたいと思っております。さて、四国遍路最大の特徴はおもてなし、お接待と思っております。写真は NPO が実施しておりますお接待の風景でございます。この日は香川県在住の外国の人たちの遍路ウォークでのお接待です。食べ物を提供しておりますが、もちろん無料です。これはほんの一例でありますが、無料やごくごく低額の宿、いわゆる全婚宿を四国の人々によって提供をされています。カミノ・デ・サンチアゴのアルベルゲに似た宿になります。実はこれ、私が一番大好きな一押しの遍路道、根来道の地図であります。81番札所白峰寺から82番根来寺まで歩く道であります。四国、香川県高松近郊の五色台の森を歩く気持ちのいい道です。82番根来寺から折り返して83番一宮寺へ行く道にこのような場所があります。これお分かりでしょうか。石が8つ並んでいます。その前が遍路道です。遍路道の脇に8つの墓標がひっそりと立っています。今から300年以上前、江戸時代のものです。もうかなり朽ち果てておりまして、文字を読むのに苦労しますが、それぞれが別の年に道中で亡くなられたお遍路さんの墓標です。私は残念ながら読むことはできなかったんですが、その道のプロに聞きますと、共通点はみんな播州の人だということです。播州は今の兵庫県、有名な世界遺産姫路城のあたりになります。さて、ここでカメラをちょっと振ってみます。180度振ってみます。行き過ぎた。ごめんなさい。あれ？動きました。これからカメラを180度振ります。墓標の前の道が遍路道です。森の中へ入っていきます。で、180度振っていきますと、だんだん視界が開けてきます。この日はちょっと霞んでるんですが、遠くに見えている島影のようなのが、現在大河ドラマで有名な源平合戦屋島です。その屋島の向こうにさらにボケてますが、オリーブで有名な小豆島があります。そしてその向こうが実は播州です。亡くなられたお遍路さんの故郷であります。これでまた元の遍路場へ戻ってきます。これで360度回りました。ご覧になったように、墓標はふるさとの見えるところで、ふるさとの方角を向いて建てられています。究極のおもてなしと思われませんでしょうか。ここにご遺体が埋葬されているとは思えませんが、四国の人の優しさ、お遍路さんを思う心の文化、四国遍路の真髄を見るような光景であります。四国遍路は心の文化、庶民の文化であります。江戸時代に庶民レベルまで広がった四国遍路文化は、今も四国の中に脈々と引き継がれています。さて、昨日当 NPO の北山さんへの質問の答えになろうかと思われることをこれから少しお話をしたいと思います。NPO の活動の一端を紹介をいたします。これは親子遍路ウォークです。おおむね小学生以下の子どもさんとその親御さん、年に3回から4回に分けて香川県内の札所寺院を巡っております。1日10から15キロ歩きます。もちろん子どもさんたちに遍路の楽しさや意義を感じてもらい、将来全1200キロに挑戦してほしい という NPO としての期待もありますが、親子の会話や四国の自然や歴史を体感する貴重な時間となることも期待をしています。NPO のマンパワーの関係もあり、1回は10から20組の参加です。これは今年で7回目となった1日一斉おもてなし遍路ウォークの写真です。参加者全員で分担し、1日で遍路道全1200キロを歩きます。今年は1000人を超える参加者がありました。目的はまず歩き遍路への入り口。これを機会に歩き遍路の魅力を感じ取ってもらい、全1200キロを走破してほしいという NPO の願いと、遍路道を歩いて感じたことを気づきシートとして報告してもらい、歩いたことによる気づきを遍路道の維持向上に資するよう活用を図ることであります。これがその気づきシートをまとめたものです。ちょっとちっちゃくて見えないと思いますが、これを我々 NPO が行政機関や他の NPO、札所の団体である霊場会などで構成している四国遍路世界遺産推進協議会に提出をし、遍路道の管理や整備に活用してもらっています。もう一つの NPO の仕事を紹介をします。1200キロ完歩の証明です。歩き遍路と自転車による遍路には、最後の88番札所大久保寺の手前にある前山のお遍路交流サロンにおいて、完歩証明書を発行しています。この写真がその証明書です。名称は遍路大使任命書としてあります。カミオ・デ・サンチアゴと似ています。自己申告ですが、服装や会話、雰囲気でお遍路さん歩いているかどうかは分かります。コロナ禍でこの2年間は少ないですが、例年3000枚ほど発行しています。この中で外国の人の割合はだいたい1割ほどになります。なお、今年からは、反時計方向に回る逆打ちに対応すべく、徳島県側でも発行すべく準備をしているところです。次に、四国遍路と世界との関わりの一端も紹介をしたいと思います。スペインの有名な巡礼の道、カミノ・デ・サンチアゴとの関係です。これはカミノ・デ・サンチアゴをたどる巡礼者の道中安全を祈願して制作をした行き来観音に魂を入れる落成法要の時の写真です。モリナセカという小さな町を通るカミノ・デ・サンチアゴ脇の公園の栗の木に彫りました。傍らにはアルベルゲもあります。コロナ禍の前に再び訪れた時には、ツアーの観光バスもここを訪れていました。生木なので乾燥してひびでも入っていましたが、さすがに観音様でした。きれいな顔は無傷でした。カミノ・デ・サンチアゴのゴール、サンチアゴ・デ・コンポステーラも訪ねています。左の写真は有名なモンテ・ド・ゴストです。この辺りは私もゴールのコンポステーラ大聖堂まで歩きました。ちなみに今日2階でカミノ・デ・サンチアゴの写真がありますが、その中の4枚は私も覚えがありました。右はコンポステーラ大聖堂の大司教さんを表敬訪問した時のものです。巡礼についていろいろ意見を交換しました。歩く遍路も巡礼も自分を見つめる心の旅というのが一番の共通点と意見が一致をしました。2階の今日の2階の写真展のキャプションにも、荷物を背負っているだけでなく心もとのような表現がありました。そのコンポステーラ大聖堂の隣にある巡礼博物館で四国遍路展を開催をしました。約1ヶ月の開催期間でなんと1万人の入場者をいただきました。日本からは先ほど申し上げた霊場会の会長にも来ていただき、四国遍路について話をしていただきました。左の写真の一番端、昨日講演をした北山さんの姿が写っております。だいぶ若いでしょ、この頃は。さらに パリでも四国遍路展を開催をいたしました。この時は運悪くフランスでは交通ゼネストがあり、SNCF やメトロが大幅に運休で大混乱をしていましたが、俳人の前住まどかさんの講演には入場をお断りをするほどの聴衆に恵まれ、関心の高さにびっくりしたものでした。最後に世界からどう見られているかの一端を紹介して結びとしたいと思います。直近のデータです。2022年、2020年には、有名なロンリープラネットが世界で訪れるべきところに、日本からは四国のみを挙げています。中んづく2022年には理由として四国遍路の接待を挙げていました。またニューヨークタイムズは2019年にこれも日本からただ一つ四国遍路を選んでくれました。その四国での遍路ツアーの一例であります。歩く以外にもいろんなツアーが再考されています。四国遍路は歩き遍路のほかに、この例のようなツアーの遍路だけでなく、車で回る人、自転車で回る人と楽しみ方はいろいろです。さすがにスペインのように馬で回る人は多分いないと思います。また4年に一度、偶然ですが、オリンピックイヤーには、個人に倣って88番から1番へと逆向きに回る逆打ちもあります。逆打ちは順打ちに比べて苦労も多いけれど、ご利益も多いと言われています。私は実は自動車で逆打ちをしました。なぜ苦労するかよく分かりました。入り口で多分配布していただいたと思いますが、そのパンフレットもリーフレットも参照され、ぜひ四国遍路をお楽しみいただきたいなと思っています。スペイン語で最後。Gracias por sus atención。そしてこの素晴らしい遍路文化を後世に伝え保護していくために、四国はユネスコの世界遺産登録を目指しています。皆様の応援をぜひお願いをいたします。ありがとうございました。では次はアイルランドからジョン・オドワイヤーさんに登壇をお願いをいたします。ありがとうございました。
Hello, everyone. This is John here in Ireland. I am John G. O'Dwyer, and I am the chairman of Pilgrim Paths Ireland, which is, just get myself lined up there, which is it's the umbrella body where all the pilgrim groups in Ireland come together. So I will now try to share my slideshow with you. Now, I'll just try and get into slideshow. So, so this is my talk then about the Irish Pilgrim Paths. And that's our website there, and that's my own Twitter account. So I'll just move on here. So I would have been from a hill walking background and a mountaineering background and alpinism and that, and written some books on that. And I was approached by a publisher then to do something which wasn't very well known at the time, but a book on the Irish Pilgrim Paths. So after some thought, I agreed I would do it, and I wrote it as a travelogue. Because I wasn't particularly religious, I wrote it as my own experience of walking the Irish Pilgrim Paths, and the working title was Sinner on the Saints Road, which is very appropriate. So I started at Slemish, and this is a volcanic plug in the north of Ireland, and it's where St. Patrick is supposed to have been taken as a slave boy, our national saint, and held there for 7 years until he escaped. And he was where God approached him and said he had he should escape, and then he should become a bishop and come back to Ireland. So that began then in the 5th century, the Christianization of Ireland. So it's quite famous, but it's actually in the north of Ireland, which is part of the UK. And it is also a part of Ireland which the majority of the people are evangelical. So when you find there, when you come to the top, you find that there is nothing to mark the fact that St. Patrick is supposed to have spent 7 years here, although the views are absolutely stunning from up there. But so then I moved on. I was doing all the paths I'm going to write them up in a book. So I moved on down then to the Toher Foric, which is the causeway of St. Patrick. And so he's then, when he came back to Ireland, reputed to have walked along an ancient path to one of Ireland's most sacred mountain, which was probably an early pagan place of worship. And he's supposed to have walked this path to it. So it's been recreated as the Toher Foric. And there you are then approaching the mountain, and that's Ireland's sacred mountain, Croagh Patrick, or the kind of peak of St. Patrick. And you come to it then, of course, it's very much a pilgrim mountain, and all the time, about 100,000 pilgrims at least climb it every year. There are huge pilgrimages twice a year. Now, what's interesting then is when you get to the top, you're now in the south, you're in the Roman Catholic part of Ireland, and there is a tendency to put, to have icons and iconography and symbols. So there's actually quite a large church built on top there in big contrast to Slemish. So that path then is about, it's really a 2-day walk. So it's about 38 kilometers to walk along that. It starts at Ballintubber Abbey. So if I just move on, then I beg your pardon. And there, so while I was doing this, then I thought, why do a pilgrim walk on pilgrim paths? Certainly my experience in Ireland, and of course out on the Camino as well in Spain. And I think it's discovery. I think it's not so much a physical journey, which I used to do when I was doing alpinism, as an inner journey. I think people expect they will be transformed in some way at the end of their walk. Appreciation for a favor bestowed, thanking very much they've been cured of some disease, something like that, or a friend of theirs has. Remembering somebody who has passed away who is important to them or can't be there. Escape. We're all probably trying to keep too many things in the air at the one time. When we go out on a pilgrim path, we're only keeping one ball in the air at one time. And then simplification. Life becomes, because of that, becomes enormously more simple. So I think of it, that's what I taught up when I was walking the Toher Foric, the acronym DARES. We moved down then to St. Kevin's Way, and he would have been one of the early Christian saints. And this is another walk. It can be done in about 1 day. It's about 27 kilometers across the Wicklow Mountains in Ireland. And that is the statue of St. Kevin looking down on the path below. So it is a beautiful path. And some people may have heard of it. It's one of Ireland's most glorious sites. And that, of course, is the symbol of early Irish Christianity. There's debate about why they were built, but certainly this is what symbolizes Christianity in Ireland, the round tower. And it's pretty unique to Ireland. And that's the famous one at Glendalough. So then I moved on down to Kerry for another one of our pilgrim paths. And this is our second most sacred mountain, Mount Brandon. And as you can see, the west of Ireland is much more rugged. You're out on the Atlantic. So there's a pilgrimage then up one side of the mountain, which is up this side. That's the tough pilgrim, that's the pilgrim route from the east. And there is the summit. Then again, you see the iconography. It's Roman Catholic area. You get the cross on the top and some beautiful views. There's also a view, a path from the west, and this is the Cosán na Neve. It's the way of the saints. And really, west of Ireland is very hard. There's, as people will know, about 20 ships of the Armada were shipwrecked on the west of Ireland, or the Spanish Armada. So what you find is very difficult to land. So this is the nearest safe landing place to Mount Brandon. And then people moved in along the route by walking from there. It's about a one-day walk, about 20 kilometers from there. And this is what it looks like. And that, of course, is along the way, Gallerus Oratory, one of the most famous and early Christian church in Ireland, built about 1,000 years ago, and has never let in one drop of water since. And then we go to where I like, Kilmalcaira, famous Irish monastic site. Owen writing there, you'll see it there, a whole stone on the left, which is now used traditionally where people want to recommit to each other. They put their fingers through that whole stone, and that's recommitment, one of the traditions of the pilgrimage. And there then is what the view from Mount Brandon, which is right over the West Kerry, which is beautiful. And down there then, if you can see it, we have Brandon Creek, which is where Saint Brendan, one of Ireland's most famous saints, reputed to have discovered America and reputed to have sailed from there, and in a 2-year period eventually ended up in Newfoundland and became the first European to reach North America. Then we move down then to St. Finbarr's Way, again one of the early Christian saints, a 2-day walk here across the Shehy Mountains. And these are some then of the very early, from the Bronze Age in Ireland. We built standing stones there to mark burial sites and ritualistic sites. And these are very common down there. And this is one along the route. And that then is where the route ends. It ends then as you come into into Gugan Barra. Absolutely beautiful. Again, across the Shehy Mountains, and a 2-day walk. And then we have the final one down in Kerry, and this is it's in the southwest of Ireland, and it's a sacred mountain. Most people won't have heard of it in the way that I've heard of Croagh-Patrick. It's Knock na Dobar, and that is the mountain of wells, and it's associated with Saint Fursey, who then traveled abroad as a Christian missionary, but he's reputed to have climbed to the top of this mountain, and it's famous because of the beautiful views there are from the top. So there we are viewing from the top of Knock na Dobar, and it's right out, and far out there you will see also the Skellig Islands, which of course were so famous. Obviously, they're out in the ocean, so they don't have a pilgrim path to them, but lots of people visit out there. And of course, it's an incredible, probably one of the most isolated monastic sites in the world, where the monks didn't even have water. They had to depend on rainfall to survive. So this was it then, and that's me then. I finished my journey then on Knock na Dobar when I was putting the book together. And the result was then the first edition, Pilgrim Paths in Ireland, which started to sell quite slowly, actually, at the start. But then as the Pilgrim Paths became more popular, it began to move on. And there have been actually, there have been 4 reprints of it at this stage. So the Irish Pilgrim Paths are growing, and we have 1 new edition as well. But then I became chairman of Pilgrim Paths. So how are we going to promote the Paths? And I think what somebody was speaking about there, sorry, just to do that. So how Pilgrim Paths then, I think in Ireland certainly differ from walking trails like the famous Kerry Way in Ireland, but also like the Appalachian Trail in the United States, which has no spiritual significance. It's authentic. Users feel they are walking in the footsteps of Pilgrim Paths, and all our paths are ones where the historian or archaeologist will say this was used by pilgrims in the medieval period. We don't, paths that don't have a tradition, but just link up a few churches belonging to St. Patrick, whatever. We don't include those. Lead somewhere past generations have endowed with spirituality. Brandon, Croagh-Patrick, Knock na Dobar, whatever you're speaking about. This offers contemplative or spiritual experience. I've written about the Kerry Way as well, but it doesn't offer a contemplative or spiritual experience, but it certainly offers a memorable experience, and that's what I would say the difference. As much an inner journey as a physical journey, I've mentioned that already, and connects with users at an emotional level. So I think Renata will know this as well, but I've been out on our own paths, and when people complete the paths, and when they complete the Camino into Santiago, there's often an outpouring of emotion, and people let it all go. So you will see people bursting into tears and that kind of thing. And I think that's because in some way it has been for them an inner journey, a transformative journey. Now, I'll just move on here then. And then we decided how we would work. And I think was it Renata or somebody mentioned the Caminoization of the PATs. And we have a pilgrim passport here in Ireland now. And so this is an incentive to explore and reconnect with pilgrims past in small groups. So those completing the passport then are awarded a Tashtis Ilrukta. So that's a pilgrim certificate. Tashtis Ilrukta is actually an Irish word, and it's a pilgrim certificate, and it's from Ballintober Abbey. And then to claim a Tashtis, it is necessary to walk the routes. And you can see the 5 routes I have talked about there earlier on. There's a total of 120 kilometers. So initially when we got involved in Ireland, we didn't have paths comparable in length with what's available on the Camino. So we put 5 together, which works quite well because it means that people who aren't particularly fit or don't want to walk 120 kilometers at one time, they can visit different parts of Ireland and do it over 1 or 2 days. In fact, the 120 kilometers would take you about 6 or 7 days, and it's all in different parts of Ireland. So it's something that works quite well. And the other 5 then, St. Finbarr's Pilgrim Path, Canut-na-Dobar, Cosán na Naomh, St. Kevin's Way, and Tucker Forest. And then there is the passport there then. So that's the passport for Ireland's medieval paths. And we have maps, we have the whole lot in it. And that then is the certificate of completion. So that is similar to the Compostela, which is awarded for the Camino, except we don't refer to the Irish pilgrim paths as a Camino. That's the Spanish word. So we use the Old Gaelic word, which is Tashtis Ilrukta, which is a pilgrim certificate. And it's written in English and in Irish. So in the Old Gaelic language. And then we had a big breakthrough then is there was an ancient path, but it wasn't really walkable. And it had been walked in the medieval period. And this was St. Declan's path. And so in 2021, this path was walked, and it links Cashel, which is the royal seat of the south of Ireland, with Ardmore in Waterford. And the tradition is that St. Declan of Ardmore was here in Ireland before Patrick, but he had no interest in going outside his local area. So when he heard Patrick came along, they had to have a meeting to decide what would happen. And in that meeting, Declan became the Archbishop of the Dacia, which is more or less an area in the south of Ireland, and Patrick became Primate of all Ireland. And that commemorates his journey to meet Patrick at the royal seat at the Rock of Cashel. And that's the route now that links Cashel, which is there on the top of the screen
1 minute,
with the bottom.
we need to be finishing now because it seems that the time is getting over. We will need to have to follow for the next speaker, if you don't mind.
So, and there we are. That's St. Declan's Way then. So there I am walking some of it, and it's Ardmore to Cashel. Distance 115 kilometers, Ireland's longest pilgrim path, and it allows 1 week, which is most people will actually do out on the Camino. It's what they will walk, and there's lots of antiquities along it. I don't have a lot of time to go into that now. And there are people walking along that path then in the spring morning, and there are some of the views. They cross over those mountains, the Knockmeal Down mountains. There they are crossing the mountains. Those are the Knockmeal Downs on the ancient path. This is Mount Melleray Abbey, which is a Cistercian abbey along the way. A lot of people stay there, and that finally then is into Ardmore, where people walk along the beach in Ardmore, and there's a round tower there. And then, of course, again, the symbol of Irish Christianity, the round tower, and they arrive down there at the end of their walk. So that was that's it then. So those are the pilgrim paths of Ireland. Obviously, I'm very limited on time, and I don't want to go over time. So that's the second edition of my book, which is out now. Anyone who wants to come to Ireland, there are maps, there are photographs, and all my bits of history and stories about it and that kind of thing. It's available, of course, on Amazon, and it's available as well as that on most of the big international booksellers there as well. So that's it. I don't want to keep you any longer. So we say in Irish, go to Mahagwiv, which means thank you all very much. And I hope some of you may come to Ireland now and enjoy our wonderful pilgrim paths. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Siguiente invitado, nuestro siguiente ponente es Braddo de Tanabe City, Kumano y la Oficina de Turismo de Kumano. Muchísimas gracias.
Now I've stopped sharing now.
The wonders of a hybrid meeting. Kumano Kodo, grassroots regeneration. My name's Brad, and it's a real honor to be here today to speak about my second hometown, the Kumano Kodo. So this presentation will pick up stories of people and personalities to include the history of the Kumano Kodo pilgrimage, grassroots regeneration initiatives, pressing issues, and inspiring international collaboration. The first personality I'll pick up goes back to Japanese mythology. This is Izanami no Mikoto. She was one of the creative deities and died giving birth to the fire deity. And her gravesite is in Kumano. This area is so rich with nature, so full of energy and mystery, that even the gods have their graves there. It's like a conduit between this world and the next. So this sacred site goes back to Japanese mythology. For centuries, pilgrims have been traveling into this mysterious place, searching for healing, salvation. So you're probably thinking, where is this magical, mystical place? Well, Kumano is not a prefecture or a political entity. It's a destination. It's like an area in the south of the Kii Peninsula. You can see on the map here, it's on the southern part of the main peninsula, jutting down into the Pacific Ocean. Another figure. This is Emperor Jimmu, the first emperor of Japan, and he also went through Kumano. When he was starting his going on a journey to the formation of Japan in the creation myth, he tried to come into the present-day Nara area from the west to the east, but he lost the battle. And he assumed that it was because he was coming against the rising sun, the sun goddess of who he descended from. So they changed tact and they went down to the south into Kumano and came up the north. This is him in the sacred mountains of Kumano. You can see he's got a bird on his stalk there, on his stick. That is called the Yata Garas, the sacred three-legged crow. And this crow is a symbol of Kumano, and it guided the Emperor Jimmu through this lush mountain regions to Nara, where he created the Japanese nation. So Kumano starts in the creation myth of Japan. It's also in the foundation myth of Japan. You've got this really rich old nature worship. Because of this sacred mountain landscape, ascetics would go out and worship and train their bodies to get the power. On the right hand, he's one of my favorite guys. This is Enno Gyoja. He is a founder of Shugendo, the mountain asceticism sect. So over time, with these mountain ascetics and the introduction of Buddhism into Japan, this area started to mix and merge the belief systems. You can see here in the mandala, the buildings, those have the local Japanese deities enshrined. But on the top, there's like a bubble, and that's a Buddhist entity. So in Kumano, these mixture and merge came together. So the local deity was considered a manifestation of a Buddha. It was a very powerful sacred site, and pilgrims started to come 1,000 years ago on these formation of pilgrimage routes to this sacred landscape. This is one of the first imperial pilgrims who came, an amazing 34 times from Kyoto. So you've got this rich background of nature worship and Buddhism and mountain syncretism, mountain asceticism, all mixed and merged together in one landscape. And in 2004, it was registered as UNESCO World Heritage. The site is called Sacred Sites and Pilgrimage Routes in the Key Mountain Range. In the south is the Kumano Shrines, which I'm going to introduce. And that was the focus of the Kumano pilgrimage. There's 3 shrines, Kumano Hongu Taisha, Kumano Hayatama Taisha, and Kumano Nachi Taisha. This scene, you can really see the syncretism. You've got the nature worship in the background with the waterfall and the sacred Shiminawa rope on top with the Buddhist pagoda in the foreground, both together in a very dramatic one shot. I won't go into it, but for me, it's very interesting to see the connection between the 3 shrines, representing cosmic time, future, past, present, representing the mythological creative family. In fertility worship, you've got the waterfall is the female, the male, the rock in Hayatama is the male, the phallic symbol, and in Hongu is the womb where the 2 unite. It's very, very interesting, very complicated sacred site. So to leading here, you've got the pilgrimage routes, a network of pilgrimage routes called present day the Kumano Kodo. And they weave and wind through the mountains, through isolated villages. The demographics have changed over time. 1,000 years ago, it was emperors. Nowadays, it's the people from around the world. You might recognize the fellow on the left there. It's me. When we were doing the organization for this presentation, they said, you have to introduce yourself because everyone always asked, why are you here? Why are you talking about this? This is me. I used to live in Canada as a mountain guide, and I worked as an English teacher a long time ago in Hongu. And when it was registered as UNESCO World Heritage, they invited me back to help use tourism to regenerate the community. So we do lots of different community regeneration initiatives. We do local workshops, talking to people about communication and culture skills and giving them capacity to work with pilgrims from all over the world. We also do community vision. What kind of village would you like to be, for example? So we get all the local people involved in all of our projects right from the start. We do preservation projects where people actually go and help to preserve the World Heritage Site. This is another fun one. We get the local kids to become the storytellers for school groups who come to the area. It's really nice to see these small kids. They're so shy. Their school only has like 15 kids, and the big students groups come from Osaka and in the mountains, and they're so shy. And then they start talking, and the other kids are interested, and you can see their shoulders get bigger and bigger and bigger. They're so proud of their little town. And it's that connection that we're building. All the young children leave the mountain communities because there's no high school, no university. But if we can get them to have the pride from an early age, then that might in the future they'll come back to help. We also do education workshops and tours for the local people to get to know their area. Because if people don't know and understand their own village, they can't take responsibility to preserve it. In our information center, we get local high school students to come to communicate with international pilgrims to talk about their village. We do dozens of different community exchange programs. But like everywhere in the world, we have problems too. In the rural Japan, it's a very dramatic aging and population decline. And Wakayama is one of the hotspots. It's a very old society, and the villages are starting to disappear. But if we can use pilgrimage and getting more people into these small areas, walking, communicating, we can recreate some of the energy to try and revitalize these areas that are getting depopulated. And we have here our next people and personality, are dual pilgrims. Aren't those great smiles? They're one of our Spanish dual pilgrims. And a dual pilgrim is someone that has walked both the Camino de Santiago in Spain and the Kumano Kodo. And we've been working together with Santiago de Compostela and Galicia province for many years in lots of different levels to connect the pilgrimage routes. On the government levels, also on the city level, doing website, pamphlets, exchange, exhibitions, staff exchange. We had one lady from our office go to Santiago to work, a lady from Santiago come to Japan. Here's our exchange people. They had such a fantastic experience. So this dual pilgrim program is to connect the people of the pilgrimage. It's very powerful. We've got a right-hand side in the bottom there. That's a joint credential. So one side is the Camino and the other side is the Kumano Kodo. At first, when we talked about doing this program, they said, "That's crazy, Brad." But people have come from all over the world. This is just a sample. A family from Hawaii who went to Spain, walked the Camino, and heard about the Kumano Kodo, and came to walk the sister pilgrimage route. The last few years of the pandemic, we've had less dual pilgrims getting registered, but we've had almost 4,000 people walk both routes from 57 countries. It's amazing. It's still a little crazy, but it's amazing. So we have a blog where we take a picture of every dual pilgrim. When I get kind of down and I need a little boost, I always go to the site and I look at these faces. Everyone's so happy. Our last presenter, John, talked about the emotion of pilgrimage and the connecting of people. And this kind of sense of joint completion or togetherness along the trail and talking, it really brings out the essence of the human being, no matter if you're walking in Spain or in Japan or both. Thank you very much. The next presenter is Miss Cristina Sanchez Caretero. I hope I pronounced that right. My R's weren't rolling.
Hola, buenas. Sí, estoy cargando la presentación. Bueno, muchísimas gracias por esta iniciativa. Muchísimas gracias al Instituto Cervantes, a Renata por su buen hacer, Iroko. Yo hablo, bueno, soy vicedirectora del Instituto de Ciencias del Patrimonio del Consejo Superior de Investigaciones Científicas y también formo parte de la sección de Patrimonio del Consello da Cultura Galega, un órgano asesor de la Xunta de Galicia, del Gobierno de Galicia, localizada en Santiago de Compostela. Entonces, voy a hablar desde esta perspectiva, voy a hablar de cómo el Camino de Santiago para las personas que habitamos en Santiago de Compostela está en todas partes. Son muchas las investigaciones sobre el camino. Ayer tuvieron la oportunidad de escuchar densamente qué es el camino, pero sin embargo también hay muchos desequilibrios. Frente a la gran cantidad de conocimiento que se ha generado sobre el camino, sobre la peregrinación, sobre las motivaciones de los y las peregrinas, se sabe relativamente poco sobre los efectos que está teniendo esto en las poblaciones locales que son atravesadas por el camino. Para ilustrarlo voy a comenzar con una anécdota. En una charla, hace ya más de 10 años, pedí al público que cerraran los ojos y lo voy a hacer ahora también. Si les parece, por favor, cierren 2 segundos los ojos, respiren profundamente y visualicen lo que quieran vinculado con el camino. ¿Ya? ¿Cuántos de las casi 200 personas que están online y de todas las personas que están allí presencialmente, cuántos han visualizado un paisaje, el campo? ¿Cuántos a los peregrinos en sí o las peregrinas? ¿Cuántos a la materialidad asociada a la peregrinación, los símbolos, la flecha de camino, una mochila? ¿Cuántos han visualizado algún edificio, alguna casa, alguna iglesia? ¿Y cuántos han visualizado a las personas que habitan esas casas? La proporción que me dio entonces, no sé si será, ahora no podemos comprobarlo, que era acumulativa, es que más del 90% de las personas del público vieron un paisaje. 60% además vieron algún peregrino. 30% la materialidad asociada con la peregrinación. 10% edificios, pero nadie, 0%, se imaginó a las personas que habitan los lugares que son atravesados por el camino. Entonces, aquí les entro de lleno a mi aportación en esta mesa redonda, que tiene como objetivo señalar la importancia de incorporar a las poblaciones locales que son atravesadas, que son caminadas, walked by the camino, en general, para prevenir precisamente algunos de los efectos que ya se han dado en el Camino de Santiago y evitar algunos de los riesgos de la caminonización. Esta es la estructura de mi aportación y voy a empezar hablando precisamente de un proyecto que hicimos en el CSIC, en Santiago, lo coordiné yo, sobre el Camino de Fisterra, donde desarrollamos el concepto de caminonización. Peter Jan Margrit fue el primero dentro de este proyecto que lo lanzó. Y nos referimos al exitoso modelo del Camino de Santiago y a sus efectos en la proliferación de rutas turísticas. Por eso me parece especialmente importante en esta mesa redonda tratar de esos efectos de la caminonización. La evolución del Camino de Santiago y los picos de afluencias de gente de otros lugares no se puede deslindar de esta línea de tiempo que ven en pantalla. 1987, Paulo Coelho, 2000 con Shirley MacLaine, 2006, Happe Kerkeling, una novela bestseller, sus diarios en Alemania. En Australia, 2011, Tom Trumbull. Y también los picos mediáticos de la influencia de la película de Martin Sheen, The Way, o una reality show de Corea, de Corea del sur de la periodista Soo Myung-sok. Bueno, y aquí tienen pues, la asociación de diferentes rutas de peregrinación a nivel mundial que siguen este mismo modelo. La secuencia del éxito del Camino de Santiago no es aleatoria, no es inocente. El proceso de patrimonialización de este camino y su formulación y desarrollo de todo un régimen patrimonial discurren paralelamente a la construcción económica y política de Europa y a la integración española y también gallega en la nueva estructura geopolítica a la que el camino servirá tanto de recurso económico y símbolo de identidad, además de las otras capas de significado de las que se ha hablado aquí. Por eso, en esta segunda parte, lo que voy a hablar es brevemente de las consecuencias que trae la invisibilización de las poblaciones locales a través de este proyecto, donde se analizó los cambios en la vida diaria que es atravesada por el camino. Se escogió este camino que no llega a Santiago, sino que sale de Santiago de Compostela y llega hasta la costa atlántica, a Finisterre y Muxía. ¿Qué significa vivir, por ejemplo, en Olveiroa, a medio camino entre Santiago y Finisterra, una aldea de 50 habitantes, donde diariamente más del doble se quedan a dormir allí? Y en este proyecto lo que hicimos fue comparar a dónde van los recursos destinados al camino, al patrimonio del camino. Aquí tienen la aldea de Olveiroa, prácticamente la mitad de las casas se rehabilitaron y es un albergue turístico, Los Hórreos. Y el resultado, aquí tienen otro ejemplo de otra casa rehabilitada. Se hicieron actividades participativas donde se analizaba qué es lo que la población local, no todas, solo había 3 personas vinculadas directamente a negocios del camino, de esas 50, la diferencia entre la implementación de las medidas patrimoniales y lo que las poblaciones locales consideraban que era su patrimonio. Se había invertido en albergues, que es lo que vieron en la pantalla, pero en estas actividades participativas lo que salía eran, por ejemplo, queremos que el cauce del agua se renueve, el agua, o que la posibilidad de mantener el campo activo en estas zonas. Con esto quiero señalar la importancia de los cuidados en la ruta patrimonial y la importancia de analizar en una escala muy micro las responsabilidades, obligaciones y retornos que las activaciones de las rutas patrimoniales traen consigo, ya que es un aspecto que suele pasar desapercibido, en el que el patrimonio requiere de un ejercicio activo de mantenimiento, no solo institucional, sino de las poblaciones locales. Y el cuidado, la conservación y transmisión en muchos de estos casos suele caer en las mujeres. Paso ya a las últimas ideas que lanzo para esta mesa redonda, que tienen que ver con estos límites y riesgos del modelo de la caminización. Y en el fondo, no es nada malo, es que las ideas que planteo tienen que ver con el vínculo de las rutas de peregrinación y conflicto desde un punto de vista de que estamos creando una violencia sistémica en la gestión de estos patrimonios actuales. Entonces, no me centro en los conflictos que se generan en torno a las rutas patrimoniales, sino es que la ejecución de todos estos proyectos lleva un conflicto intrínseco que hay que aceptar para poder saber construir modelos que lo incorporen. Y pongo 2 ejemplos. Desde las asociaciones de amigos del camino, así como Brad en la charla anterior ha mencionado cómo el Kumano Kodo se ha incluido en las listas de la UNESCO, estas asociaciones están pidiendo, por favor, sáquennos de las listas, porque la protección, y aquí tienen un ejemplo concreto, la protección está causando la propia destrucción. Aquí ven un ejemplo de los fondos reservados a la revitalización, a que el camino, pues eso, no tenga charcos, no tenga barro, y ahí Este es el final. Esto dio origen a una protesta y a pedir, por ejemplo, que se incorporara el camino en las listas de la UNESCO de riesgo de peligro de destrucción, lo que se llama la lista roja de la UNESCO. Lanzo otro ejemplo. El caso de la iglesia de Santa María das Areas en Finisterre, una iglesia con una puerta del perdón que solo se abre en los años santos para la peregrinación, también una pequeña iglesia. En octubre de 2015 se dieron por finalizadas las obras de restauración de esta iglesia en el municipio de Finisterre, que tiene unos 5.000 habitantes, perteneciente a la provincia de Coruña. Es una iglesia románica del siglo XII, declarada bien de interés cultural. Durante la primera misa, después de que se rehabilitó, se protestó duramente. La población circuló la iglesia y no dejó que se celebrara esa misa por no haber contado con la participación de la población. Y la petición concreta, aquí tienen la iglesia, no sé si ven. ¿Sí? ¿Está todo bien?
Sí, sí, Cristina, te vemos y te oímos.
¿Sí? Bueno, sigo. La petición concreta era que se retirara esta pintura que la población de allí veía como azul, un azul César Portela, el arquitecto que lo había renovado, y en los medios de comunicación salió esta lucha. La lucha vecinal por quitar este azul, que puede parecer muy blanco, pero allí parecía azul, puede parecer una frivolidad en la actual situación global, pero cobra relevancia si se entiende como un acontecimiento desde donde queda patente la transformación silenciosa que se está viviendo, y es que las poblaciones locales quieren estar presentes. En el caso de la iglesia de Fisterra, algunos vecinos y vecinas piden ser parte de la toma de decisiones, pero no lo consiguieron hasta organizarse como asociación y tener un lugar muy activo en cómo querían que terminara la peregrinación allí. Ya terminó, como conclusión, uno de los principales riesgos de la promoción de las rutas de peregrinación es esa, como digo, esa violencia sistémica que desencadena que haya procesos participativos. No voy a entrar en este esquema, pero sí mencionar que normalmente la participación se entiende simplemente como dar información, o en el mejor de los casos tener el feedback, los comentarios de la población local, pero eso está creando muchos problemas en las rutas que ya tienen toda una trayectoria. Y la propuesta que traigo a debate en el marco de esta mesa redonda tiene que ver con entender esa violencia sistémica, con ver hacia dónde se quiere llevar, no solo hablar de esos picos de violencia, sino de lo que hay por debajo, como ven en esta diapositiva, hacia dónde se quiere que vayan las transformaciones sociales que implican las rutas de peregrinación. Es importante señalar la necesidad de un proyecto para el Camino de Santiago que tenga en cuenta más lógicas, además de la lógica del mercado. Hasta ahora estos mecanismos han sido lo de promoción y muy vinculado a promoción turística, que han formado parte de un proyecto de futuro, omitiendo otros factores como los indicadores del bienestar de la población local o los índices de satisfacción de esa experiencia turista peregrina o turigrina, que es el término que se maneja muchas veces. El problema, por tanto, no es el camino, no es el turismo, no son los turistas, sino esa situación de violencia sistémica cuando se invisibiliza a la población local y cuando el mercado es la principal fuerza motora. Bueno, muchas gracias y seguimos con el debate.
聞こえる。いるかな。後ろにも揃えました。ちょっとだけお待ちください。すいません。まずはパネリストの皆さん、ご登壇ありがとうございました。皆さん、拍手の方で。ありがとうございました。Thank you very much for sharing your experiences. 日本語だけ大丈夫ですか？はい、じゃあ日本語でいきます。今回は本当にありがとうございました。そういう意味でもう本当に世界をまた日本とヨーロッパをまたいでそれぞれが今まで蓄積してきたレガシーも含めてお話しいただいた中で、今日は、どちらかというと今までの昨日お話しなされた歴史的な背景だけではなく、今日は実践者の皆様として具体的に、どういう課題を現場で持ちながらこの巡礼というものを継続しているのかとか、あとさっきクリスティナさんからもお伝えがあったように、ある意味いろんな意味でこの地域っていうところと関わっていくっていうことを不可欠だと思う中で、いかにこういう観光というものがそこと接続しながらやれていることがあるのか、ないしはそれによって何か壊れていくものがあるのか、少し踏み込んだ形でお話ができたらなと思ってます。で、昨日もいわゆる多様性とか、多くの人に来てほしいっていうそういう切望のある一方で、その多様性、一体本当にどういう人に来てほしいのか、そんなことも含めて今日お話ができたらなと思っています。はい、ではちょっとお話をさせていただきますが、まず、皆様にお話聞きたかったんですけれども、さっきのクリスティナさんのお話の続きといいますか、それぞれのやっぱり地域で、ある意味この地域というところをどういう形でやっぱり尊重しながらそれぞれの活動をなさっているのかということを聞いてみたいんですけれども、今日は何でしょうね、私が皆さんに説明していくとか質問していくというよりかは、ここにいらっしゃる5名の方々のベストプラクティシャーとしてのいろいろそれぞれの学びというところも含めて進めてはいきたいと思ってますので、今の質問としてあるのは、それぞれが地域というところをどんなことを意識しながらこの巡礼の活動を行っているのかっていうところをもう少し踏み込んでお話しいただければと思います。じゃあジョンさん。聞こえるかな
？John, is it?
はい、聞こえますか？
Yeah, okay. Well, the fact is, building a relationship with the local community, the fact is that the way we work is we only work with PATs that have community groups. So what we are is the umbrella body. So we work with the local volunteer group. So we work with the St. Declan's Way Committee, the St. Finbarr's Pilgrim Pat group. Now the Tahar Foric is mainly organized through the Abbey at Ballintubber. So it's actually completely from the ground up. It's the community groups that have evolved in each area, and then they send forward representatives to Pilgrim Pat's Ireland. So it's completely on a volunteer basis, and it's the concerns of the local community. And in fact, if there is a Pilgrim Pat that, you know, in Ireland that doesn't have, we'll say it's someone in the private sector or something like that, they don't come on board with us. It has to be community driven. It has to be volunteer driven. And so that's how we work. And all the community groups then come together under an umbrella and they can express their concerns there.
ありがとうございます。そうですよね。やっぱ地元のやっぱりボランティアさん、ボランティアさんも含めてやっぱり参画していくことによって開いていけることっていうのはあるんだろうかなと思いますが、いかがですか
？Hello? Okay.
聞こえます。はい。
We got it.
すいません、ブラッドさんお願いします。
Yeah. It's a really interesting issue on how to get the local people involved. And John's example was a very good one. Without the local people involved, it's really difficult to create a sustainable place. If you don't have the local people there who take responsibility and control of their village, then the outside pressure can be very intense, especially when it's communalized. Once you get a destination or a walking place being famous and people coming, there's going to be a commercial interest. And without developing the local people's sense of pride and give them the skills to control their village, to control the vision of what they want, then tourism can take the wrong direction and you can start to get destructive forces. So for our example, in Tanabe City, in Wakayama, on the Kumano Kodo, the Kumano Kodo went through a series of decline from the Meiji period. So once Japan was opened after the feudal system collapsed, the pilgrimage culture collapsed, and Kumano Kodo went into, was degenerated, was lost. And it was only being brought back about 1999, 2000. So when that was registered as very recently. So, and when the World Heritage in 2004, the property, it was a really big boom and a very big shock to the local people because there hadn't been that number of pilgrims. So when we got our office together after the World Heritage designation, after this boom of visitors settled down, our first 3 years were focused not on promotion, but on the local people and getting the systems in place, getting the people's understanding. Once we had that in place, then we shifted to promotion. It was a little tricky because the local governments, of course, wanted lots of visitors. They wanted the economic impact. But we were able to explain that if you put a nice base infrastructure in with community involvement, then you've got a nice long-term benefit. So after 15 years, up until the pandemic hit, we went from maybe 900 international visitors to over 50,000 in these small towns. But it's a big number, but the local people were still happy. There wasn't as much pressure. So they were still able to welcome more people. And if you can create that sense of pride and give them the skills, then it's got a long-term sustainable chance of holding back on the commercialization. So getting the volunteers and the local people involved is really a big key to pilgrimage development into the future.
ありがとうございます。本当イネスさんどうですか？いろいろやることが。
It's okay? So I totally agree with you. The economical and social development of these communities must walk together, side by side. You cannot take the greed just to have money. And sometimes even our job as government entity is to show municipalities, is to show associations what the benefit will be if they think in the long term. So that's why you have to think first about the territory. How are you going to develop these routes? Fatima is very specific. There are other religious or spiritual paths that you can take in Portugal, as the St. James or the Jewish heritage, that have other particularities. But in Fatima, as I told, people began to go there to pay a promise. So they would go for through national roads, crossing highways. I don't know if any of you had the chance to see the movie Fatima that was presented here this week, but that movie shows what happens right now. Every year people die because they get run over by cars because they want to go very fast. So they are not interested in anything rather than just go there, pay the promise, be thankful for whatever has happened to some relative or some disease, some promise they made. These people, they even travel with sidecars. So they sleep in minivans. They don't even, the return to community is zero, but they just pass. So that's why when we started to see that more and more people wanted to go to Portugal and wanted to know Portugal and even go to Spain through Portugal in a more inner discovery way, first we thought about the territory, then we put everything everyone at the table, and sometimes it's a mess to put like 20 organizations because they even want to discuss why is the Camino or the path going this way, not that way. I have a restaurant there. But it's, as I said, and as I continue to stress, you have to listen to people. You have to listen to everybody. Same with Caminos, same in the big cities. People need to feel that tourism gives them something back for their daily life, for their own development, instead of just garbage or noise. People have to see tourism as a source for good. And we, the government, the public institutions, we need to do whatever is at our power to do. Like, we have to increase flights during winter. We have to try to take people to other places than the big cities. We have to develop new products that go to inner places inside the country. So I think that's the way to go.
ありがとうございます。この同じ質問でクリスティーナさんもそうですし、清弘さんももしここでお知恵をお借りできたらと思うんですけれども。じゃあ先にお願いします。
入ってます？
入ってます。
四国で言えばですね、私の今日のテーマがお分かりいただけたと思いますけども、おもてなしの文化なんですね。ですからこれは来られる人、それから四国にいる人の心の交流なんですね。その文化の中で来てますので、今のところ大きなコンフリクトはないと思っています。で、今我々は一つの目標として熊野古道さんについていって世界遺産を目指してますが、そのための組織というのは、地方自治体、国の出先機関、NPO、それからボランティアのグループ、ほぼ包括的に全部入ってるんです。ですからそういう中でいろんな議論が進んでますので、今ご指摘あったことは非常に重要だと思いますが、今のところ僕はうまくいってると思います。ただ一言やっぱりいろいろ事柄をやるとお金が絡みますから、ここはなかなか難しい点があります。でそういう意味では地元のボランティアの方々が道を整備する、観光客じゃなくて、それだけじゃなくて、巡礼者歩く方々をおもてなしをする、お接待をするという、こういう流れの中で我々はやっていけると思ってます。で、よく四国を歩いてみてくださいと僕言うんですけども、必ず子どもたちが「こんにちは」とか「おはようございます」言ってくれるんですよね。ちょっと例を出したら悪いと思いますが、東京の子どもたちは大人見たらこの人いい人かな悪い人かなと思えと今教育されてるんじゃないかなと思いますが、四国の子どもたちはもう知らない人に「おはようございます、こんにちは」簡単に声かけてきます。この文化の違いがある限り、四国の遍路文化は僕は大丈夫だと思っています。特に今日親子遍路紹介いたしましたけども、彼らが大きくなった時に今の問題は多分自律的に解決していける そういう人材になってくれると思ってます。
ありがとうございます。本当に東京というところと、ある意味地方都市というところの生活環境っていうものの変化によっても、その地元と実際に関わる人の関係っていうのは変わってきますよね。で、その延長線にどういう観光なり、どういう人とのつながり方が生み出されるのかっていう具体的な発想にもつながるのかなということを今お三方の話を聞いてと思いました。クリスティーナさんもいかがですか
Yeah, actually, I'm very glad that you mentioned hospitality, because I think if you combine hospitality with scale, it's extremely, when the process is scaling up in numbers, like the Camino de Santiago, then it's a challenge. Because Hiroko, when you at the beginning mentioned the healing power of both pilgrimage and art and linked to well-being, my main question is if the Caminoization, so if the Camino model is the one that is having an international impact, what we are seeing is that it's very difficult to have hospitality, to have well-being, to have all of that, and at the same time, increasing numbers of pilgrims / tourists or peregrinos. So I think spaces like this, to actually quietly and having the time to think about the silent transformation, and here I'm mentioning the French philosopher François Julian, a very small book, The Silent Transformation. We need to stop and think on the silent transformation that the Camino model is creating in order to imagine alternatives. I know I'm not giving answers, just posing questions.
ありがとうございます。いや、今こうやってやってせっかく帰ってきた質問なんですけれども、申し訳ない、このままブラッドさんとか、また清弘さんの方に行かないば、現場の経験っていうところも踏まえて、今のクリスティーナさんの質問に対してもしコメントあればお答えいただけますか。お願いします。
歩く人というのは、今日何人か僕も言いましたけど、おっしゃってましたが、決して歩くだけが目的ではない。自分の心と向かい合う時間を貴重な体験とされていると思うんですね。今日私、自分は車で回ったと申し上げました。僕、それまで四国遍路はどこをどう歩いてもいいんで、途切れ途切れ歩いてたんですが、この職を引き受けるにあたって、きれいに一回回ってみようと思いました。ただし、もう時間がないんで、車で回りました。それでも1週間以上かかるんです。でも、スタートの時、お寺に行って、作法はあるんですけど、そんなの僕知りませんでしたから、般若心経も読めませんし、なんとなく、とにかく回ってみなきゃで始めたんですけども、最後の1日2日、終わりが近くなってくると、すごく敬虔な気持ちになるんですね。多分これ、カミノ・デ・サンチアゴを歩いた人も、なぜモンテ・ド・ゴッソがあれだけ有名なのか、そこに来たときに、多分皆さんの気持ちがかなり消化していると思うんですね。で、そういう気持ちがある限り、先ほど心配されたようなことは、その人たちにとっては起こらないと私は信じています。もしそういうある意味でのオーバーツーリズム的なことが起こるんだとすれば、それは本当に巡礼だとかお遍路だとかということを分かってない人たちだろうと私は思います。
ありがとうございます。ブラッドさん、何か補足ありますか？
That really is the big key, isn't it? The balance between the balance between the economic development into these rural areas, but also preserving the culture and the belief system. And I think what was said about getting the right kind of people is important. So it's the messaging. When we do our messaging, we hardly ever use the word hike. Because as soon as you use the word hike, it just becomes walking. So we always talk about the pilgrimage or pilgrimage routes. And if that's the brand or the idea of this place is sacred, it's important, we get more people with that mentality, walking. And I think the walking is the key. Like John said, once you get people not just on a tour bus going to a church, all mixing together and leaving, you get those people on the trail for an hour or 2 hours, even for a day or a week, all of a sudden starts to change the relationship between yourself, between each other. So I think this difficulty between preserving the local culture and increasing the economic viability of these rural areas is finding that balance. And I think one of the key things or hints for that balance is to get people walking the routes as much as possible. And that's where, like in Portugal, you need all of the government support to put in the nice systems in a nice, even and controlled and formulated way.
ありがとうございます。なんかいいですね。このパネリスト同士がこういう形でいろいろ刺激し合ってくださるような状況はなかなかモデレーターとしてはたまりません。
I would like just to add something, not specifically related with Fatima, but with the work that Portugal has also been made with Caminho de Santiago and with Spain. The Spanish authorities, as far as I know, are very concerned with the Caminification of and so for years they have tried and are trying, and I think they are accomplishing in some way to diversify. Start the Camino in Portugal. We have different Caminos. Start from France. So diversification because people want to get to Santiago. That's the goal. They can go because they are religious. They can go because they want to walk. They can go because they want to pay a promise. That doesn't matter. The final destination is Santiago. So as more diverse as the Camino can be, the more communities you can help. And the more economical sustainability and development you can bring to the territory. Of course, this is an extremely difficult balance, but I also think that these past 2 years have shown the world that many communities without tourism cannot survive right now. You just have to figure how to balance. Is the constant work of dialogue, first of all, and trying to develop and to rebring to the present some of the ancient ways of handcraftsmanship, community ways of cooking, of pottery. Everything right now can be amplified by these pilgrims, because walking is important, but if people just walk and they don't even bring anything back to the community, also the difference, as you said, is they don't destroy, they respect, but they don't bring anything back. So it's important that communities feel that payment in development, that payment in respect. And that's the balance to cope. It's difficult.
ありがとうございます。何かここにジョンさん、なんか補足ありそうですか？一瞬顔が。ジョンさん大丈夫ですか？
I would just like to say that we try to balance it's community, it's essential. The essential thing is the essential drivers of the community. So the people who control the path are the local communities, and we feel that works extremely well. But then what happens is, and we're at an earlier stage than obviously the Camino and some of the other paths, but the tour operators begin to come on the scene. And there are some now in St. Declan's Way, and they're doing tours, and we welcome that. We welcome the commercialization because they do bring spending into the communities. So we work hand in glove with them. In other words, what we're saying is the path itself, how the path is administered, that kind of thing is always in the hands of the communities. But then once the tour operators are happy with that and don't want to change anything, then actually we try to support them. So for example, we have a group going down St. Declan's Way, and tour operator bring them in, and I will meet them at the Rock of Cashel and speak to them, and then they will meet some of the local communities. It's called Knock Me Down Active, but that doesn't matter. And somebody will speak to them from there, and then they will visit the Abbey at Mount Mellery as well and visit the monks. So we're trying to get in that delicate balance. So we do welcome tour operators because they have the expertise, and volunteer groups can't deal with overseas groups from the United States or where we're targeting. But we welcome them, and so far it has worked very well. And most of the tour operators anyway who target that tend to be the niche market operators. So they do tend to have a respect for the local communities. And not only that, I think they recognize that the fact that integration with the local communities, access to the local communities, and access to the local stories as well as that makes quite a big difference and improves their product. So it has been working well so far. Thank you.
ありがとうございます。少しずつ、こちらの方にも今日聞いてくださっている方から、質問等が来始めているので、ちょっとこちらを見ながら皆さんのお話を聞きながらになってしまいますが、先ほどの、質問の中で、ボランティアさんの話が出ましたよね。で、これはその労働搾取ではないんですけれども、ボランティアというものが当然のことながら、自分自身が地域のために何かをするっていう気持ちっていうところはあるのは当然だと思うんですけれども、最近そのボランティア自体を組織化するような形で、なんとなくみんなで街を守っていこうよとか、みんなで何かをしていこうよっていう大きな旗のもと、何かわからないけど働いてる、関わっている。で、結果的にそこの潤い先っていうのは実は制作側だったり企画側だったり、どこまで本当に地元のボランティアさんたちのところに軽減されているのかっていうような質問が今一つ来てるんですけれども、そのあたりそれこそ清弘さんもそうですし、ブラッドさんもそうですけれども、常に新しい世代、若い子どもたちに対して巡礼、ピルグリムっていうことを少しでも理解してもらうような活動をしている一方、さっきも写真にも出ましたが、世界遺産を守っていくためにゴミ拾いをしていこうよというような形で、いろんな方に関わってもらうという仕組みっていうものを、実行なさっている中で、今の質問に対して何かあれば、じゃあ清弘さん教えていただけますでしょうか。どうぞ、はい、お願いします。なんかすみません、授業みたいな、ごめんなさい。
ボランティア、四国もたくさんのボランティアの方が道の維持だとか設備の維持に努力してくれています。今日プレゼンテーションの中でお話ししましたけども、四国遍路の基本はお接待、おもてなしの心です。それはお遍路さんに対するものであると同時に、自分自身に対するものなんですよね。だから自分自身がそれで安らぎを得る、楽しみを得る、そういう性格のものなんです。したがって道普請をする、標識を直す、お遍路さんの案内をする、あるいは観光客でもいいんです。外から来ていただいた方に気持ちよく帰っていただく、それは取りも直さず自分のためでもあるんですよね。それが四国のお接待の心ですから、今言われたことに対しては、今言ってる限り何ら不安はありません。
どうですか、ブラッドさん、今の質問に対してですと。
その地元の人が、I'm sorry, do it in English, sorry. I'm getting
日本語でも大丈夫
my
です。
brain's getting mixed up here. Next I'll be speaking Spanish, and I don't even speak Spanish. Having the local people involved in the process is very important. This idea of the omotenashi no kokoro, or the osettai no bunka, that's really an amazing example. Volunteering, it doesn't have to use the word volunteer though. Just kind of being taking care of your place, being taking care of your life, having community pride. So we often don't use the word volunteer. We just kind of incorporate it into the lifestyle. It's the same probably as in Shikoku. They probably don't say I'm volunteering. They probably just go out and clean the road and help people. So I think sometimes in Japanese anyway, the word volunteer has a different meaning than the kind of the Japanese version of helping out people. So sometimes there's a little gap there in the
ニ
volunteer.
ュアンスの違いってありますよね。
Yeah. So we appreciate that, but on the other side, like you need to have the financial back, the rewards, and to create a business or economic viability for these areas, we also need the local guides. So I know in Santiago and the Camino, they have lots of regulations with guiding, and you have to have licensed guides to get money. There's not really volunteer guides in Camino. They've been able to really create a good quality system, create employment and have quality explanations. So we've been trying to emulate that, to get local guides trained and have a salary. But in Japan, the idea of having a guide as a job is still a novelty, especially in the countryside. So the word guide, it's often volunteer guido. It's a set. But in other countries, a guide is actually a job, like a taxi driver or a teacher. You can go to university to become a guide. So in that way, the idea of volunteer is a little, we have to work through that difference to actually create more of a guiding structure. So that's where I think the word volunteer kind of makes it a little tricky, fuzzy. Instead, you just need it naturally, like the lifestyle. The Japanese people are the most hospitable in the world. Once they get past their shyness, they're really the omotenashi no kokoro, or settai no kokoro. It's wonderful, especially. So I think that word volunteer, especially for Japan, is really kind of a tricky concept and can get a little skewed sometimes.
本当ですね。そういう意味ではそういう意味ではイネスさんとかクリスティーナさんとか、そういう意味で先ほどもね、カミナイゼーションにも間接的にはつながっていくのかなと思ってるんですけれども、そういうこのボランティアについて今何かご意見ございますか？あとこの後少し時間もあっという間に迫ってきましたので、会場の方からもぜひ質問等を受けたいと思ってますので、ちょっと最後こちらの質問させてください。
Right, can I could just come in here then? This is John here in Ireland, if you can hear me. Can you hear me? John?
Yes,
Hello?
John.
Yeah, just to say that how we work that is generally that the volunteers will be people, and they do it voluntarily. I think they're not being exploited. They want very much to promote the heritage of their community. They're proud of their community. Ireland has a very, very strong tradition of volunteerism in Ireland. In fact, most of the sport in Ireland is actually, even though it's played at the top level, it's actually at a volunteer level. So there's a lot of that. How we work this is when you're making decisions about the path as a volunteer group, nobody is paid. I'm not paid. Nobody is paid. Well, I'm not paid anyway. But then we have other people. For example, somebody who may be on a volunteer group and they are, we'll say, an IT specialist. Once they go out then and they're requested by the group to go out and do IT work, that's part of their job. Therefore, they are paid for that. That's how we see the thing. If somebody is part of the group and they're a guide and they have a lot of knowledge, when they're actually deciding or working as part of the community, not paid, but once they lead a group along the pilgrim random path they are. So that's how we see it. The decisions about the path, all volunteerism, but we don't expect people then to do a day's work. And then the other thing is, there's a lot of part-time farmers in Ireland, and now they are given jobs half-time, and they actually maintain the paths. So that involves them along the way as well. They're actually paid to maintain the paths, and it gives them involvement as well as that with it. So that's how the paths are maintained. Thank you.
ありがとうございます。いや、クリスティーナさんお願いします。
Just very quickly, because I want to leave room for the audience. I think the question is so much case specific, because I don't think general rules like volunteers are good or bad or whatever. Because I think underneath it, what we have is participation itself. And participation, it's just a word. It's an empty signifier. It can mean so many different things. And in fact, research on the actual imperative of participation, so like it's required to, we are seeing that comparing different cases and different rules, that it's not the way to go, like require participation for the sake of it, because it's so much context specific what participation means. For instance, in most of the cases, participation is just like one technique of giving information, of upside down, trying to get so-called communities involved. And basically what I want to, my point here is in each context, the structure of the pilgrim paths needs to work with specialists in different levels of participation, like Brad was pointing out, working previously, not at the end of the process, but from the very beginning, previously, accompanying. So we need to develop accompany systems throughout the process. So that's my point here.
ありがとうございます。本当におっしゃる通り、場所の文化とか背景によって、そもそも仕組み自体も違いますし、さっきブラッドさんもおっしゃったような、ボランティアっていう、日本的な文化、ましておもてなしというある意味文化的背景がある中で、この言葉を使っていく、こういうふうな形で参加っていうものを促していくっていうことの課題っていうのは少し見えたのかなと思います。で、それでは少し会場の方に来てくださっている方々から質問と受けさせていただきたいと思います。お願いします。
Yes, good afternoon. Thank you so much for all the panelists for such a comprehensive explanation with many different examples. To pick up on this thread of communalization, it seems to be one of the common topics here that you try to provide as much information, regulation, to make it as safe and immersive as possible to pilgrims to undertake their journeys. But I have a concern here with the excess of information in this information space that we now have. If you look up and you want to prepare your pilgrimage, you will read books, you will go online, and often you will see the same references coming up and up again. Usually the different people taking the same picture in the exact same spot. That makes it very identifiable. So how, looking at the impact of social networks, younger people going online most of their day, and also using these pilgrimages to reflect their lifestyle because they want to do it and they want to be shown and be visible doing it. How can you, I wouldn't say fight back, but how can you cope with this desire for instant gratification when doing the pilgrimages, when the idea itself is to slow down, it's to experience the whole thing and not the exact moment in which you arrive at the destination or you pass through a famous scenic spot? How do you fight this trend towards instant gratification vis-a-vis the more immersive, full experience of going through the pilgrimage itself? Thank you.
ありがとうございます。非常に素晴らしい質問だと思うんですけれども、私の学生とかでもインスタを撮るために場所を選んでやっぱり行く子って非常に今増えてるっていう実情の中で、今の質問にどなたでもいいのでお答えいただけますでしょうか。ありますか？ どうですか？もちろんです。どうぞ。
That's natural. People tend to go to tend to go to places that are known to take a picture or two or three or four. That's why so many spots in cities and were known. And here we are talking about different routes, different motivations. Like Christina said, the concept is very wide. So, for instance, in Fatima case, it was actually to avoid that or people would go by road or just buses of tourists arriving to the shrine of Fatima. It was to avoid that the routes were created. So they are very far away from that over-tourism scenario. I believe that the speed of life and the speed of being in the trendy spot is far from getting into the routes, the pilgrimage routes, more the final destination. Everyone wants to take a picture in Fatima, everyone wants to take a picture in the shrine or in Santiago, but the Camino itself, I don't see it. I don't see that it's that close to be that kind of to have that kind of problem.
That's a great question. I wish I had the answer for it. I think sometimes the people, if they can understand the context more, they might be able to respect it a little more and take just a little more time. Right now, you see people have no time. They're very busy, very quick. One shot, it's gone, over. But if people are walking, slowing down, and if you can control the story or the information a little bit, like you said, you might be able to get people to understand the importance of the site, and that might make them just slow down a little bit, just to feel it. So we have like a filter concept of how to get information to people. There's online on our main site, which is the kind of basic stuff. And then once you're on the trail, we've got signage about each spot. And it's not directly translated from Japanese to English because it doesn't have a nice story to it. International people can't understand the historical figures. So we've done all original context and text along the way. And it kind of builds a story about the importance of the place. Same with the information center. It's the next level. It's a little more deeper. And then we have official guidebooks, which explain all of the history and the legends and the background and the culture. So for the next step, if people want it. So I think you have to get the information to the people at the right time to get them to think about it. So along the way, our explanation boards, we can really see the change in people. Well, just a very personal story. I wrote all of the text for all the hundreds of kilometers, and I had a nice story along the way and interesting things. And my mother came from Canada. And whenever I do translation, I always do the mother check, my mom's check. I think in my head, will my mom be able to understand this? Because she doesn't know anything about Japanese history or culture. So we went on a walk on the pilgrimage route when they came for my wedding. And I didn't say anything, I didn't explain it. She read all the signs. And it's just in the mountain trail, normal scenery. She read this sign and she looked up and she's like, wow, you live in an amazing place. So it passed the mom test. So I think sometimes if you can get the information to the people somehow, instead of just not on Instagram, but actually catch their attention at the right time in their experience, they might slow down enough to realize that it's an important place and it might change a little bit. It doesn't work for everyone, but I think you're right. We have to slow down the information. It's too much online. It's just so fast paced. And I think that's where the possibility of pilgrimage is really good to get people slowing down from this fast-paced lifestyle that we have now. That probably didn't answer your question, but
でもおっしゃる通り、私の紹介させていただく芸術祭もそうですけれども、やっぱり今一度こう時間っていう感覚をどう取り戻していくのかっていうことが、ポストコロナの状況の中でより色濃くなってきたのかなっていうふうに思いますし、やっぱこのどうぞ。
ちょっと僕が理解間違えてるかもしれませんけども、ネット上での情報の管理、一元化というのは非常に難しいと思っています。我々もネット上の情報というのは非常に大切だと思ってるんですが、これを一元的に管理するというのは、ちょっと我々も手に負えない、個別にやっていただくよりしょうがないのかなと。これは逆に言うと、いろんなガイドブックが著者によってたくさんあったのと同じことじゃないかなというふうには思ってます。
ありがとうございます。そうですよね。そういう意味でガイドブックを書かれているジョーさん、いかがでしょうか。今さっき多分
Well, in Ireland, yeah. Well, the first thing I suppose we take a slightly different approach in Ireland. We have a diverse group. Firstly, the communities are going to be a diverse group, and then there's a central representative group from all of those. You have a Catholic priest, you have an evangelical minister. I know one or two people who are actually not believers at all, but they're all involved, and I don't know about the others and don't particularly want to know. So the first thing we have agreed is that what each person takes from the path is up, or any group, that is really up to themselves. That's what we provide the path. Now we recommend that we'll say when you're doing the new St. Declan's Way, it's not new, it's 1,500 years old, but it's just been remarked in that people will do it in 6 days. That's how we feel you get the best response, the best mindfulness, the best understanding of the communities, the best chance to meet with them. People do come along, and we have had a group who prided themselves on being very fast, and they wanted to do it in 3 days, and they did it in 3 days. And we say, that's absolutely fine if that's what they want. With regard to the other paths, I mentioned 5 of them that have come together under a passport. We recommend again that it takes 7 days to do those, plus travel from one path to the other. But one lady took it into her head, she's a fell runner, she took it into her head, and she ran it in the whole thing in 48 hours. And all we can say about that is, well, very good on you if you can do that. And we welcome it. She's using the path. We hope she's getting benefit from it. So that's how I suppose we operate. We have recommendations. We think there should be mindfulness, but we're well recognized that if a group comes in from the United States, and St. Declan's Way is starting at the most iconic attraction in Ireland, which is the Rock of Cashel, everybody's going to go up and take a selfie there. And, that's the way things are. But if that makes them happier, we have no comment on that. Thank you very much.
ありがとうございます。そろそろ時間にもなってきましたが、もしこの会場の中でもう一つ簡単な質問等ございましたらお受けいたしますが。
Yes, I have a question for you because you were part of the panel too. And I was thinking about how to create a new pilgrimage route. I think it's very interesting to learn from experiences that are similar than the ones we've learned this week. So in what way you can use these experiences to create a new path, a new way to regenerate the area you are working with now?
大きな質問がやってまいりました、最後の最後に。ですね、まずそういうふうに考えていただけて本当ありがとうございます。何事も一体私の考え方からすると、伝統っていうものだったりレガシーっていうものをもう一度見返したときに、一体何を残すのか、何を手放すのかっていうことをまず考えます。で、その中で例えば歩くっていうことを仮に手放したときに、一体その巡礼といういわゆる儀式の中、一体何が残りうるのか。で、それ自身がつながっていくこと、それ自身が新しいオーディエンスにとって巡礼という解釈になるのであれば、それは多分巡礼ではないかなっていうふうに私は思っています。 で、そういう意味で仮に芸術祭っていう今日は例を出させてもらったりしましたけれども、実際にこれだけやっぱり何百年と続くものの中で、やはり私たちの中でも身についてしまったことだったり、多分当たり前と思ってしまったことっていうのが多分たくさんあると思うんですね。で、その根本をもう一度見直すことによって、新たにこれからのオーディエンスとともに育てていく巡礼とは何かというような発想でクリエーションしていくっていう気持ちと、それこそ想像がとても大切なのではないかなと思います。すいません、これは宿題として持って帰りたいなと思ってるんですけれども、ありがとうございます。というなぜか私で終わるディスカッションにはなりましたが、これをもって2日目の、パネルを終了させていただきますが、この議論は多分今日終わることではないと思っております。これを機にね、皆さんの中で多分それぞれの中で培ったことを考えたことを持ち帰っていただいたり、それこそさっきのデュアルプログラムではないですけれども、何かこれからのコラボレーションの形につながっていただけたらなというふうに期待しております。ちょっと不鈴かなモデレーターではありましたが、ありがとうございました。そして登壇者の皆さん、本当にありがとうございました。はい。最後、全体の統括ということで、
Bueno, muchísimas gracias a los participantes de toda la semana, sobre todo de los dos seminarios de ayer y hoy. Creo que ha sido sobre todo muy interesante el proceso de llegar hasta aquí en colaboración entre los socios, los amigos de Japón y de Europa, de Portugal y de Irlanda. Hemos aprendido muchas cosas y el objetivo de esta semana es que esto sea el principio de una colaboración en la que los caminos de Japón conozcan a los caminos de Europa y, por tanto, las personas, ¿no? Creo que algo muy interesante que creo que hemos aprendido es que somos bastante parecidos, más de lo que yo pensaba. Es decir, en realidad son muy similares, aunque uno sea católico o shinto o budista o nada, o ateo. No tienen ningún, pero somos muy parecidos y realmente creo que también el hacer uno de estos caminos, de una de estas rutas, cambia mucho a la persona y la forma de ver el país, el pueblo al que se acerca después de realizar estos caminos no tiene nada que ver con un turista. Es decir, y de hecho en Santiago nos lo dirían, ¿no? Que la gente que hace el Camino de Santiago ya está pensando cuándo va a volver y tiene una percepción del país mucho más próxima, conoce a los pueblos, conoce a la gente. Naturalmente hay gente también que sea más aproximadamente, más similar a un turista, pero la mayoría creo que sí hace algo muy distinto y creo que eso es de lo que queríamos hablar, ¿no? De esa forma de aproximarse a conocer el país de verdad y conocer a la gente para en realidad descubrir que somos muy parecidos. Nada más, muchas gracias y les dejo ahora con las palabras de Tiago para que cierre en nombre de la Embajada de Portugal y de la de Irlanda, que va a hablar también de parte de Aisley. Gracias.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Victor, for talking before. You'll save me at least some of my messages, which I'll have to repeat in some way. But again, really to thank you, the audience, first and foremost, for participating and this week hosted here at the Cervantes Institute in Tokyo to talk about pilgrimages in Japan and in Europe. A special thanks also for the panelists today and yesterday, who have taught us so much and shared their experiences, their views, their histories about how to manage and how to do a pilgrimage in a way that provides for the local communities, but also enriches those that participate in them. I fear, and this is more of a personal remark, perhaps a takeaway, a giveaway rather, from this week's events, but I fear that both the COVID-19 pandemic and the war as well have perhaps given us reason to pause, to think about the meaning of life, what it means to have a normal life, but it had also given us the bad side of uncertainty, to become more risk averse, perhaps become less confident, less willing to meet the other, to find the unknown in life. And I leave this symposium, but also this week of events, a bit more optimistic, because here we found enough reason to actually go out, stop a bit our daily lives, to go through a pilgrimage once or twice or 34 times, as it happened before, and really engage, open ourselves up to new experiences, learn from different people, find new beliefs, new religions, new values, new histories, new mythologies. So I think these are all very important elements as we come out of this pandemic, hopefully sometime soon, but also as the modern world just floods us with information to make us a bit more pessimistic, a bit less curious about the other, and a bit more self-centered and inward-looking. So I think it's really a call, the common message at least that I've heard throughout these past few days. It's a call for hope. It's a call for curiosity. So I thank you all, I believe on behalf of the audience as well, for sharing your expertise and your knowledge with us and make us want to do some, if not all, of these pilgrimage routes. So thank you again for your participation, and thank you, Victor Ugarte, for hosting this event here at Cervantes Institute in Tokyo. So thank you very much for everyone. Thank you.
This これをもちまして2日間にわたり、続きました日本ヨーロッパの巡礼道から見る精神性と再生の終了となります。たくさんの方に、ご参加いただきましたことを心より感謝申し上げます。ありがとうございました。
Una foto.